Book of Heaven, Volume 19, Part 15. July 29th, 1926. Everything that our Lord did invested the whole creation by virtue of the divine will. Who shall put all creation in feast once again? I was making my usual rounds in the kingdom of the Supreme Volition, and as I arrived at the point of what the divine will had done in the humanity of our Lord, I looked at his tears, his sighs, his moans, and everything he did, invested with the light of his will. Its rays were beaded with the tears of Jesus, filled with his sighs, invested with his sorrowful and loving moans. And since the creation is filled and invested with the divine will, as its rays of light invested everything, they beaded all created things with his tears. All things were invested with his sighs, with his love, and all moaned together with Jesus. Now sweet Jesus came out from within my interior, and leaning his head on my forehead told me, "My daughter, by sinning, the first man lost a divine will, and therefore my humanity was needed, united with the eternal Word. That was to sacrifice the human will of my humanity entirely and completely, in order to reacquire this divine will, so as to give it back to the creature. So my humanity gave not even a breath of life to its human will, but kept it only to sacrifice it, and to pay for the freedom that man had taken of rejecting this supreme will with so much ingratitude. And as he lost it, all of its goods, its happiness, its dominion, its sanctity, failed him. Everything failed him. If man had lost something human given to him by God, a saint could have rendered it back to him. But since he lost a divine will, another man and God was needed who would be able to give it back to him. Now, had I come upon earth to redeem him, one drop of my blood, one little pain of mine, would have been enough to put him in safety. But since I came not only to save him, but to give him back my will that he had lost, this divine will wanted to descend into all my pains, into my tears, into my sighs and moans, into everything I did and suffered, in order to reacquire the dominion in all and over all human acts, and therefore be able to form once again its kingdom in the midst of creatures. So, as a little child, when I cried, wailed, moaned, my divine will, more than solar ray, invested all creation with my tears, with my moans and sighs. The stars, the sun, the starry sky, the sea, the little flower, all cried, moaned, wailed, and sighed, because the divine will present in me was the same as that which reigned in all creation, and therefore, as though naturally, the stars cried, the sky moaned, the sun wailed, the sea sighed. The light of my will brought my echo into all created things, and repeating my acts, they kept company with their Creator. Oh, if you knew the assault that the Divine Majesty received in hearing my crying, my moans and sighs, in all creation. All created things, animated by my will, prostrate at the foot of the divine throne, deafened it with their moans, drew it with their tears, moved it to pity with their sighs and prayers. And my pains, reverberating in them, bound it to surrender the keys of heaven, and implored that the kingdom of the divine will come upon earth once again. My celestial Father, moved to compassion and tenderness by his own will that cried, moaned, prayed, and suffered in all his works, surrendered the keys, and gave his kingdom once again. But in order to be sure, he placed it in my humanity, so that at the appropriate time he might give it back again to the human family. Here is the necessity for me to do the human actions and to descend into the order of the human actions, because my divine will was to take its dominion and substitute the order of its divine will in all the acts of creatures. See then how much this kingdom cost me, with how many pains I ransomed it. And this is why I love it so much, and I want to embellish it in the midst of creatures at any cost. But tell me, my love, if everything you did was invested with the unity of the light of the Supreme Volition, since this will is one, and cannot be detached nor separated from its acts, the creation is no longer alone, but has the company of your acts, of your love, of your moans. Therefore, there isn't that sepulchral silence you told me about the other time. And Jesus All-Goodness added, My daughter, you must know that as long as my humanity remained on earth, and as long as the Sovereign Queen also was there was no solitude, nor sepulchral silence in the creation, because by virtue of the light of the divine will, wherever this will was, it spread as light, and diffusing in everything, it multiplied in all created things, and everywhere my act was repeated, because one was the will. This is so true that the creation gave sensible signs both at my birth and even more so at my death, to the point that the sun became dark, the stones split, the earth trembled, as if all were crying for their Creator, for their King. They cried for He who had kept them in feast, who had broken their solitude and sepulchral silence, and all, feeling the bitterness of such a hard privation, they gave signs of sorrow and crying, and returned once again to the mourning of their solitude and silence. In fact, as I departed from the earth, He, who in the light of my will emitted the voice that, forming the echo, rendered the creation speaking and operating, was no longer there. It happened as to those metal instruments, that with artfulness enclose the voice of one who speaks or sings. The instrument speaks, sings, cries, laughs, but this happens by virtue of the echo of the voice that has spoken. However, if the intelligence that produces that singing is taken away, the instrument remains mute. More so, since I did not come upon earth for the creation, but I came for man, and therefore everything I did, pains, prayers, moans, sighs, I left for the good of souls, as more than a new creation. In fact, since everything I did was done by virtue of my creative power, everything is in the act of saving man. In addition to this, creation was made for man. In it, he was to be the king of all created things. But by withdrawing from my divine will, man lost the regime, the dominion, nor could he form laws in the kingdom of creation, as is usual with a king when he possesses a kingdom. In fact, having lost the unity of the light of my will, he was no longer able to rule. He had no more strength of dominion. His laws had no value. Creation was for him like a people that rebels against the king and makes of him its laughingstock. And this is why my humanity was immediately recognized by the whole creation as its king, because it felt in me the strength of the union of one single will. But as I departed, it remained without king again, and closed in its silence, waiting again for someone who, in the kingdom of my will, would emit his voice to let it resound in it. But do you know who she is who shall put all creation in feast once again? The one who shall form its echo and shall render it speaking again? It is you, my daughter, who shall take back the dominion, the regime, in the kingdom of my will. Therefore be attentive, and let your flight in my volition be continuous. August 1st, 1926. The Secret of Jesus. The power and goodness of his secret. I was longing for my sweet good, the life of my life, and since he was not coming, I thought to myself, how hard is his privation. Jesus does not love me anymore. And not only have the caresses, the kisses, his great shows of love that he so abundantly gave me before ended, but his lovable and enrapturing presence also keeps me waiting longer and longer. Oh God, what pain! What a continuous martyrdom! What a life without life, without air, without breath. My Jesus, have pity on me, on your little exiled one. But while I was thinking of this and other things, my always lovable Jesus came out from within my interior, and leaning his arms on my breast, told me, "My daughter, you deceive yourself in saying that I no longer love you as before. On the contrary, you must know that my kisses, my caresses, the shows of love I gave you, were the outpouring of my love. Unable to contain it in my interior, I showed it to you with many loving signs. And since between you and me there wasn't a great work to do, I amused myself with you, with many signs and stratagems of love. But this served to prepare you for the great work that was to be carried out between you and me. And when one works, there is no time to amuse oneself. However, in spite of this, love does not cease, but is increased 100 times, strengthened and sealed. Now, my daughter, having shown to you the outpouring of my constrained love, I wanted to move on to give you what I contained within me. I wanted to communicate to you the great secret of the kingdom of my will, giving you the goods it contains. And when important secrets are communicated, and this is the most important secret of the whole history of creation, amusements, kisses, and caresses are put aside. More so since the work of the kingdom of the supreme volition is exuberant, and the greatest that can exist in the whole history of the world. Therefore, manifesting my secret to you surpasses all loves together, because in the secret there is the sharing of one's life, of one's goods. In the secret there is trust, there is reliance. And do you think it is trivial that your Jesus has trust in you, and that you are the object of my hope? But not just any trust and hope. Rather, the trust of entrusting to you the kingdom of my will, and the hope that you shall place its rights in safety, and that you shall make it known for me. Now, having entrusted to you the secret of my will being the essential part of the divine life, I would not know what to give you that is greater than this. How can you say, then, that I love you less than before? Rather, you must say that this is the great work required of you, and of me, in the kingdom of my will. You must know that I am always occupied and all intent on working in you. Now I expand your capacity. Now I instruct you. Many times I move on to work together with you. Other times I make up for you. In some, I am always occupied, and this says that I love you more and more, but with stronger and more substantial love. August 4th, 1926. The one who is in the divine will is safe, wherever she might be, because in it there are 4 floors. My days, my hours, are always in the nightmare of the so very hard privations of my sweet Jesus. Oh, how painful it is to pass from light to darkness. And while one thinks she is going to enjoy the light, he escapes like a flash, and one remains in the dark more than before. Now, while I was under the press of the privation of the light of my sweet Jesus, and feeling that I could take no more, my dear life, my highest good, moved in my interior, and as I felt him, I said to him, Jesus, how can you leave me? Without you, I don't know where I am. And he, all goodness, told me, "My daughter, what? You don't know where you are. Are you not in my will? The house of my will is large, and if you are not on one floor, you must be on another. In fact, my will contains 4 floors. The first one is the low level of the earth. That is, the sea, the earth, the plants, the flowers, the mountains, and everything else that exists in the lower part of the universe. My will dominates and rules everywhere. Its place is always of queen, and it holds everything in the palm of its hand. The second floor is the sun, the stars, the spheres. The third is the azure sky. The fourth is the fatherland, mine and of the saints. In all of these floors, my will is queen. It occupies the first place of honor. Therefore, whichever of these floors you might be on, be certain that you are always in my will. If you make your round in the lower part of the universe, you shall find it awaiting you in the sea, that you may unite with it to do what it does. As it carries out its love, its glory, its power, it awaits you on the mountains, down below in the valleys, in the flowery fields. It awaits you in all things, that you may keep it company, so that you may omit nothing. Even more, you shall be the repeater of its acts. And once you have gone through the first floor, move on to the second, and you shall find it awaiting you with majesty in the sun, so that all its light and its heat may transform you and make you lose your being, and you may know how to love and glorify as a divine will knows how to love and glorify. Therefore, make your round within our house, in the works of your Creator, because He awaits you everywhere, that you may learn His ways and repeat what my will does in all created things. In this way, you shall be sure of being always in the Supreme Volition. Not only this, but you shall be always with me. And even though you do not always see me, you must know that I am inseparable from my will and from my works. And therefore, since you are in it, I shall be with you, and you shall be with me. Having said this, he disappeared like a flash, and I remained in the dark more than before, continuing my acts in the Supreme Volition. But while I was doing this, I prayed him to come back to his little daughter, saying to him, "My Jesus, I pray you by virtue of your own will, and since your will is spread throughout the whole creation, filling it completely, it is your very will that prays you in the sun to come back to your little newborn. It prays you in each star. It prays you in the azure sky to hasten to come to the one who cannot live without you. It supplicates you in the sea, in its roaring waves, in its sweet murmuring, to come quickly to your little exiled one? Don't you hear, my love, my voice in your will, resounding in all created things, and all creation praying, supplicating, sighing, crying for you to return to the little one of your will? How can so many voices not move you to pity? How can so many sighs not push you and not make you fly? Don't you know, O Jesus, that it is your will that prays you? And if you do not listen to it, it is your will that pays the price? And I believe you cannot do without listening to it. But while I was saying this, and yet more, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior, transforming me completely in him, and sharing his bitternesses with me, that were already too many. Oh God, how many sad things he showed, and his heart was pierced. Then afterwards, as though wanting to cheer himself, making himself seen with his usual pen of light in his hand, he told me, "My daughter, let us put everything aside. Let us speak of the kingdom of the Supreme Will that interests me so much. Don't you see how I am always in the act of writing its qualities, its celestial laws, its power, its divine prodigies, its enchanting beauty, its infinite joys, the order and the perfect harmony that reigns in this kingdom of the divine Fiat, in the depth of your soul? First, I make the preparations. I form in you all the properties of it, and then I speak to you, so that by feeling its properties within yourself, you may be the spokesperson of my will, the crier of it, its telegraph, and the little trumpet that with a shrill sound may call the attention of those passing by to listen to you. The teachings I give you about the kingdom of my will shall be like many electric wires, that are such that, when the appropriate communications are established and the necessary preparations are made, a single wire is enough to give light to entire cities and provinces. The power of the electricity, with rapidity greater than that of the wind, gives light to public and private places. The teachings about my will shall be the wires. The power of the electricity shall be the Fiat itself, that with enchanting rapidity shall form the light that shall cast away the night of the human will, the darkness of passions. Oh, how beautiful the light of my will shall be! In seeing it, creatures shall dispose the devices in their souls in order to connect the wires of the teachings, so as to enjoy and receive the power of the light that the electricity of my supreme will contains. Do you want to see what shall happen? Look, I take one wire of my teachings linked to your soul, and you emit your voice within the wire. Say, I love you, I adore you, I bless you. Whatever you want to say, and be attentive on looking. I said I love you, and that I love you changed into characters of light, and the electric power of the Supreme Volition multiplied it, in such a way that I love you of light would go through the whole vault of the heavens, fix itself in the sun and in each star, penetrate into heaven, fix itself in each blessed, form its crown of light at the foot of the divine throne, and enter even into the bosom of the Supreme Majesty. In sum, wherever the divine will was, there it would form its electric light. And Jesus continued, "My daughter, have you seen what power the electricity of the Supreme Fiat has, and how it reaches everywhere? The electricity of the earth diffuses down below at the most. It does not have the power to reach even the stars. But the power of my electricity diffuses down below, up high, in the hearts, everywhere. And when the wires are disposed, with enchanting rapidity, it shall make its way into the midst of creatures." You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 19, Part 15. Fiat.